Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. How to make dhikr with a heart attached to Allah. How to make dhikr with a heart attached to Allah. I've mentioned this before in the live answer session, but one of the most effective tools or methods of dhikrullah that I found to assist in terms of concentration and focusing on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Naqshbandi muraqaba and wukuful qalb concepts. They are not necessarily foreign concepts to the Sunnah or to Islam at all, in the formula, of course, because the formula is simply to focus on the heart as the heart focuses on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you visualize this process, and one then listens to the heart calling out to Allah, saying Allah, Allah, Allah. And this focused approach of, visualizing the spiritual heart and concentrating on the spiritual heart, letting go of all other thoughts and bringing one's thoughts back to Allah always, and just listening to the heart calling out Allah, Allah, Allah. It has profound effects on one's spiritual self, and that's generally referred to as muraqabah. Wukuful qalb, on the other hand, is slightly more tricky, and it is about always and perpetually being focused on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the back of one's mind. A simple way to explain this is you have what's top of mind. So the action that you are busy with at present. At present, I'm sitting in front of a camera, in front of a computer, and I'm engaged in this discussion. So that's at the top of my mind. But in the back of my mind, I'm also conscious about the cat that's sitting here behind me, that I shouldn't lean backwards because then I'm going to lean against the cat and I might hurt the cat. So I'm not thinking about it all throughout the teaching, but it's at the back of my mind. I'm not focused on that. It's not distracting me, but it's still at the back of my mind. Perhaps a more serious example, inshallah, is someone who has a very good or very troublesome situation in their lives. Very good, perhaps they have received news that they are expecting a child, mashallah. Or very grave in that they have a relative who's very ill in hospital. Allah protect all of our family and loved ones. Such a person may be at work. They may be engaged with some other activity, cooking food or fixing the car. But all the while, at the back of their minds, they are still thinking about that very good news, the expectation of a child, or the very serious news, the ill relative at the hospital. So if you incorporate the same human ability, except that you are always in the back of your mind conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala despite what you are doing in front of you, then that is essentially what is referred to as wukuful qalb. And this is also a very effective means for having the heart engaged with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout one's day. I would also like to add that if you don't incorporate these Naqshbandi methods of dhikrullah, there's also just your standard format of repeating words of dhikr. Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. But what would be different herein is to make a point of focusing on the meanings of those words as we recite them, as opposed to absent-mindedly saying the words without necessarily thinking of anything. Or even worse, saying the words but thinking of other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the way one would do this is, of course, to first learn the meanings of these words and not just the translation. Like, for example, Subhanallah is generally translated as glory be to Allah. But if you really think about it, what does that mean? Like, how do I conceptualize glory be to Allah? But upon study, you come to find out that Subhanallah comes from the root letters sabaha. Sabaha means to swim. It creates distance between yourself and the point that you started swimming at. So it's about creating distance. And when we're saying Subhanallah, we are declaring that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is far beyond, far removed from any worldly understanding, any worldly imagination, any idea of imperfection, or even any of our ideas of perfection. That Allah is far removed from that. And a nice translation for that is transcendent. That Allah is transcendent. Far be it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have a son. Subhana. This is how Allah uses the word in the Quran. So when you're saying Subhanallah as an example, to each and every time remind oneself that Allah is absolutely perfect and He's without any defects. He's far removed from creation and created entities and from having any imperfections or even from my idea of what perfection is. And the same goes for Alhamdulillah and Allahu Akbar. So to connect to the deeper meanings of the adhkar that we are reciting, which would facilitate for us to not think about other things while we are reciting them. And in this way, we can be more focused on our remembrance, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah.